Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you on February 10th of 2022. And I want to speak to you about something that was just sent to me by one of the audience members. As I've been preparing for my interview tomorrow with Mr. Larry Sharpe, who's running for governor of New York, as I'm preparing for a live event tomorrow that'll be taking place across the country and in particular in the Broome County region, I wasn't paying attention to all the news that was happening today. And there was an interview between Joe Biden and Lester Holt of NBC News. And it's disturbing. It's disturbing in both what was said and the implications of what has been said. And it is something that as a member of the military, as someone who has family who's also been part of the United States military, as the friend of many of our service members who have suffered in their service, I take this very strongly. I want to explain, but before we get started, I want to mention that if this is the first time you are seeing our channel, we welcome you. We thank you for being part of our audience. We want you to know that we do long-form political commentary. And every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out to you on all social media that the internet overlords will allow to be able to hear your voice, your tweets, your chats, your phone calls from anywhere in the world to tell us what you think about the issues that are affecting us all. And so we do this because we believe in the First Amendment, not just for Americans, but for everyone. Everyone in the world has this right, whether your government agrees, whether or not the internet overlords agree. You have a right to speak, and we want to hear your voice. So we do hope you'll join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, let me get to what happened today, February 10th, with NBC News and Joe Biden, because it's disturbing on multiple levels, and it will affect the entire world, in particular Europe and our allies across the pond in the United Kingdom, but it affects everyone. And going forward, for the next 3 years, it's going to affect the United States international relations. That's why this is a really big deal. What was sent to us was something that really disturbed us. And let me start perhaps there. So we were sent this article from the New York Post, came out today at 6:43 p.m. That's a world war. Biden won't send troops to get Americans out of the Ukraine. The headline is amazing. It's shocking. And so you have to look into the story. And in the second paragraph, the answer from Joe Biden, speaking to NBC News anchor Lester Holt, is there is no reason why Joe Biden would send Americans or send troops to get Americans out of the Ukraine if an active war starts taking place. That is a shocking statement that Joe Biden is saying and has said on television, on a program that will be seen around the world, that the United States government will not intervene to protect its own citizens. That's what it means when you say the United States will not get American citizens who are in harm's way abroad. That is a signal for every terrorist organization in the world, every nation that hates the United States, Iran, North Korea, China, and yes, Russia too, that they have carte blanche to go out and target American citizens. Because the Biden administration will not react. They will not take action because they're afraid of other nations. That's a signal. That's putting a target on every single American military member, every single American businessman, everybody on vacation. That's a target. And it should be understood as that is how it is perceived around the world. Whether you as a American citizen, whether you're a Democrat, a progressive, a conservative, a libertarian, a Republican, whether or not you perceive it as being a target in the world, that is exactly how it is seen internationally. That the United States is not willing to stand up for its own people, that it will not defend them and it will not come to their rescue. And I had to say, that can't be true. I had to think that there was some hyperbole that was going on, some hyperbole, that somehow the New York Times was taking this out of context, that they couldn't possibly have Joe Biden coming from the White House, talking to NBC News, internationally seen, and saying something so direct and so endangering of the lives of American citizens around the globe. So I went to the article itself. This is the actual interview as published by NBC News on February 10th of 2022. It's an almost 9-minute clip. It came out at 5:30 p.m. And so I listened to it. And this is the exact section, and I want you to hear this so it is completely in context.
Asked about the tense standoff with Russia over Ukraine.
What are your plans toward American citizens who are in Ukraine and might be there during an invasion? What scenarios would you put American troops to rescue and get Americans out?
There's not. That's a world war. When Americans and Russians start shooting at one another, we're in a very different world than we've ever been in.
Not even.
He will not go to save American lives that are in danger in a nation that is at war. Keep in mind, these are members of the United States State Department. They work for the United States embassies. They are in the Ukraine because Joe Biden, the United States government, wants them to be in the Ukraine. They are in harm's way because the United States wants them to be in that nation. They didn't volunteer. This isn't someone who just said, let me take a vacation into one of the most dangerous parts of the world at one of the most dangerous times. And Ukraine isn't necessarily dangerous always, but there is and has been tensions since December. This is dangerous. So we're not talking about someone on a joy trip. We're talking about someone who is there because Joe Biden, the Biden-Harris administration, and the United States government needs and or wants them to be there. And he will not go get them. He would not save them. He would let them die. That's important to understand and to put it in complete context of what he is saying. Let's go on.
On behalf of simply evacuating Americans.
No, how do you do that? How do you even find them? This is not like, I'm hoping that if in fact he's foolish enough to go in, he's smart enough not to in fact do anything that would negatively impact on American citizens.
Let
me stop it again. So Lester Holt refreshes. You're just not going to go get them? And Biden, as you hear him say, well, how could we possibly find them? They are members of the United States State Department. They work in the United States Embassy. We know where they are. We know who they are. We have known that for, well, we sent them there. So it's not a question of how would we get them or how could we find them. We know who they are. We know where they are. And we can tell them very quickly, tell the embassy, go to the Kiev airport. There is a C-130 airplane waiting for you. Get on it and get out of the country. It will be there at 3 p.m. or 3 a.m. or whatever time is necessary. This is not difficult. How could we find them? We know who they are. This is not some kind of guesswork. Okay, let's go on. Let's go on with this question and answer.
Have you told him that?
Yes.
You've told him that you know, Americans will be a line that they can't cross?
Well, I didn't have to tell him that.
So the question from Lester Holt to Joe Biden is, in your conversations with Anthony Blinken and himself directly, did you tell Vladimir Putin that if Americans die, that is a red line and the United States will take action, that this is something that cannot happen even by accident in the fog of war? His initial answer from Joe Biden, as you just heard it, was yes, I told Putin not to endanger Americans' lives, that would be a problem. And when Lester Holt clarified, you told him that. You told him, don't you dare endanger American lives, that this is a red line and this will bring the full force of the United States military. And the answer from Joe Biden was, no, I didn't have to tell him that. So you just lied. You just lied to Lester Holt on NBC on February 10th in front of the American people. You just lied. You didn't tell him that American citizens' lives was a red line, a line in the sand. This was something that would bring about the full force of the United States government. You lied. You, Joe Biden, are a liar. You lied to the American people, and it's on NBC. This is the left-leaning news media. He lied to you. He lied to you, the American people. You can debate whether or not it's necessary to make that statement. Although, if we're talking about diplomacy, if we're talking about trying to disencourage Vladimir Putin and Russia from invading the Ukraine, using American citizens as a hostage, using them as a bargaining chip, saying that if any of the Americans in the Ukraine were to be harmed because of the actions of Russia and any of its agents, even accidentally shooting or bombing or I don't know, whatever the situation may be, that would cause harm to American citizens, would bring the full fire and fury of the United States government into this conflict. Now, that would be something that would make any nation, should make any nation, pause. We used to do that with presidents who had balls. You're endangering American citizens. We will drop bombs on you. We will send troops over and attack you. We will activate our carriers around the world and come straight at you. You do not endanger American citizens' lives for fear of the giant being awoken, and we will take a big step and drop you. Any nation should be afraid of that. Every nation should be afraid of that. And yet Joe Biden has said, no, I didn't actually say it, because he knows it. Then why didn't you use it as a tactic of diplomacy to say, you know this is true. You know we would have to react. Look what we did after 9/11. Of course, we're going to go ballistic. You better not invade. And God forbid if you do, and even one accidental bullet travels just a little too far and hits even one American citizen, we're going to go ballistic, which would encourage Russia not to invade. That would encourage the Russian-aligned forces not to take violent action and to keep them calm, or at least to keep certain regions, or especially around Kiev, to keep them calm, at least to reduce the potential of harm to civilians that happen to be around the U.S. citizens and our embassy workers. This would be the natural logic. And this would be diplomacy. But that's not what Joe Biden says. No, he wouldn't do that. He knows better than do that. Why? Because you've clearly stated, Joe Biden has made it very clear internationally that he, one, expects Russia to invade. He expects Russia to take over part of the Ukraine. In December of 2021, he has suggested and has tried to convince the Ukrainian government to appease Russia and give up land. He has already stated that he would never send American troops into the Ukraine to defend the Ukraine. And we have already seen that he has given up on Americans in Afghanistan to the terrorist organization, the Taliban. 72,000 guys who fight out of caves. And he gave up an entire nation, gave them an entire army, and has given them $782 million to date. Why would anyone think that you're going to do anything? Why would they be afraid? We have now seen, as has come out of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, a report that Joe Biden knowingly abandoned 9,000 American citizens in Afghanistan. We have seen since September, there has been a bouncing ball of reporting on how many Americans actually continue to be in Afghanistan. It is so bad that every contact that I have in Congress has no idea what the actual number is at any given moment. We don't know. We have seen it go from 85 Americans were abandoned to 479 Americans abandoned. We heard in December of 2021 that 6 Americans were left abandoned. And now in January, we've heard it's 80 Americans are left abandoned. All of these numbers coming from the Biden-Harris administration. These aren't numbers coming from Republicans. These aren't numbers coming from libertarians. These aren't numbers even coming from overseas. This is coming from the Biden-Harris administration. And we have been talking about it on this program because the rest of the major news media really won't. And we know that it's almost 9,000, or at least could be as many as 9,000, because again, we've read the report that came from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And then here's something that's important inside that report that you need to hear about. And I want you to listen to this, this section here. Executive Order 12656. That's 12656. Primary responsibility for protection and evacuation of Americans from threatened areas falls on the State Department with the support of the Department of Defense. Specifically, the Secretary of State is charged with, quote, protection or evaluation of United States citizens and nationals abroad and safeguarding the property abroad in consultation with the Secretary of Defense and Health and Human Services. Now, we discussed this on February 9th. And we were making sure this was very clear because that's the first time that we found out from the United States government that 9,000 American citizens had been abandoned. And in there, we found that because of Executive Order 12656, Antony Blinken violated the United States regulations that he abandoned. He threw away his obligation to protect American citizens. And of course, Antony Blinken works for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. This is the Biden-Harris administration. They have authorized Blinken to do or not do all he is doing. So this is coming from the White House. And now we hear from Lester Holt that Joe Biden himself is willing to violate Executive Order 12656. That Joe Biden himself will not protect American citizens when they are in harm. He will not safeguard them. The very purpose why our government exists. We've been talking about this for some time because Joe Biden says, well, they should just leave. We've told them to leave. We told them to be there. We told them to be in the nation. And how badly has Joe Biden handled this? Well, we first spoke about this on our live stream on January 23rd of 2022. We were one of the very first domestically to discuss what the Biden administration was doing. As we said here, the voice of America. And you're not going to see this anywhere else. The voice of America, and there on January 21st, they were reporting this. This comes from the U.S. State Department. The spokesman for the U.S. State Department said, if U.S. diplomats and their families must be evacuated, quote, American citizens should not anticipate that there will be U.S. government-sponsored evacuations. And said, well, there's commercial flights. You can use that instead. I want you to think about, so on January 23rd, under the directive of Antony Blinken coming directly from the White House, the Biden-Harris administration, we told the people we sent to the Ukraine, the people we have kept in the Ukraine because of the danger of an upcoming war, we told them, find your way out. Figure it out for yourself. We said to them the same thing we said to the Americans in Afghanistan after September 1st. We said, figure it out. Find your way to safety. You're on your own. And we are telling our people and their children, the wives, the husbands, the children, that they need to figure out their own way out of this nation if they can. Even and especially now, if there is actual war going on, you will not be protected. You will not be saved. At another point, we went even further in having this conversation on January 23rd. We've got the entire Marine Corps. We've got the Air Force. We've got bases in Germany. You mean to tell me we can't take any of the Air Force planes that we have stationed in Germany at the Army bases? We can't take one C-130 or a couple of them, fly them over to Ukraine right now, pick up the families, the women and children, the parents and grandparents, these American kids, fly a C-130 over there, pick up the kids, and take them out of that nation before bombs start dropping on their heads. You mean to tell me we can't do that? That Antony Blinken and Joe Biden are so without compassion that they would rather have the bombs drop on the kids' heads. And that's the thing. Now, yes, I'm very upset about this. I'm very passionate about this. American children are in danger. And we can't fly a single plane. We can't get anything to go and help get them out. And we're now being told that if active war were to happen, we're not going to help them. Remember, Joe Biden says, and I won't take it from Joe Biden's point of view, because, okay, let's think of it from how he's saying it. So Joe Biden, in telling Lester Holt, he says, well, it would start a world war. Well, that's true for Russia, too. They know that. So if we flew a C-130 into Kiev to get all of the American children out, and we announced that around the world, that the American government is going in, we're flying a C-130 in to pick up American children, and somehow Russia and or the Russian-backed military forces shot down an American C-130 plane, which, by the way, has defenses against this, but somehow they were to shoot down that plane or kill those children or the soldiers trying to protect those children. Do you think the rest of the world would take the side of Russia in this? The United States would be justified in everything that we would want to do. The Russians would be more inclined to never touch that C-130. They would do everything they could to make sure that not one of their soldiers, not one of their aligned forces would be anywhere near Kiev to hit that C-130, because they know that would bring the full force of the United States with the full backing of everyone in the world, knowing that Russia just killed a plane full of children. So the United States wins in this. We have nothing to fear here. Russia has everything to fear, because that would unify the world against them. And that would cause them more problems, not less. But I want to think about it because, well, why would Biden say that? Maybe it's the economy. Maybe it's too far. We can't get a C-130 over to Kiev, except, yes, we can. And I want to answer this question because I've heard people say it. Well, how far is it? Ramstein Air Base which is a Army air base in Germany, United States military, is 2.5 hours. Where is it? A direct flight is 2 hours and 25 minutes. Let's call it 2.5 hours flight time from Ramstein to Kiev. 2.5 hours. That's about as long as it would take for me to go to, what, Florida? You could almost get to California. It's close. This is really, really close as we're talking about geographies around the world. You could easily get a plane there. Let's say the entire turnaround time, 2.5 hours there, 2.5 hours back, that's 5 hours. Let's call it 6, whatever you want to call it. This is an easy flight, but maybe there's not enough fuel. Maybe an American C-130 Hercules aircraft cannot get there and back. Now, according to military.com, the purpose of a C-130 is global airlift. It works with the United States Air Force, the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard. It's able to carry, it goes at 400 miles an hour. It's got 44,000 pounds of payload, which is more than any couple hundred people would possibly weigh, more than children possibly weigh. It's got a range of 2,000 miles, and it takes a crew of 3 to 5 people. So it's not a question of is the C-130 capable of doing this? How much would it cost, you may say to yourself? Well, it costs about $31,500 per hour. $31,500 for the jet fuel. That's assuming it uses all of its 7,000 pounds of jet fuel, 7,000 gallons of jet fuel, which it would not use. It would take maybe 4,000 for the entire 5-hour flight. That's there and back, would be somewhere around 4,000 or 5,000 gallons. Let's assume they're spending 7,000 gallons somehow. It would cost somewhere in the range of about $31,500 for a government that is spending $7 trillion. Let's get in further. Well, what about the people? Do we have enough people? If every single person that was on that flight, because it's so important to grab American children and to bring them out of the Ukraine, let's say we're going to get no one less than a captain, a United States Air Force captain, flying the planes, and in the planes, they've got some experience. They've been flying these planes. They know exactly what they're doing. 5 people, all of them at the top of the rank of captain. That means they make $90,000 a year. That means that we're going to be paying $47.15 an hour. Let's round it up to $50 an hour for these individuals for 5 hours, 5 people. And let's also figure out, so that's not a problem. We've gotten more than enough people in the United States Air Force. Forget about the Army, forget about the Marine Corps. Just in the United States Air Force, we have more than enough people who have the experience to be able to fly the C-130. How about this? How many people can it hold? Well, depending on the exact version of the C-130, if it's a C-130H, it can hold about 92 passengers. If it is the C-130J, which is the most recent and current version of a C-130 plane, 128. So somewhere between 92 and 128 passengers. You say to me, well, Mike, that's not a whole lot of people. Well, in the embassy right now, in the United States Embassy at Kiev, there are approximately 181 Americans that are actually in the embassy, that are part of the State Department, that are there. We're talking about 200 some odd people. And if you're telling me that there's about to be bombs dropping and we have children to get out of there, I don't think that anyone's going to worry about doubling down and packing the people. It's not a question of is there enough weight? The plane carries tanks. It can take people. Tanks that weigh tons are flown on C-130s. It can easily carry more people. And if you're telling me that it can naturally and normally easily carry 128 people in an emergency, in a war zone where we are trying to evacuate children, which are smaller than a regular adult, you mean to tell me you don't think you could fit 200, 300 people on that plane? I guarantee you probably could. Which means that we could get everyone out in a plane. Worst case, we have to use 2 planes. But let's just say we're only going to get the moms and the children. Let's say we're only going to get them, which would be somewhere in the range of 100 and maybe 100, maybe 120, 150 people. Okay, let's say we're just taking the moms, we're just taking the kids, because I don't know of a single dad or a single mother for that fact who wouldn't say, take my child out of this war zone. I will take the risk, take my child first. Let's assume that that's exactly what happens. We got an entire plane, flies on off. Let's assume, how much is this going to cost the American people? 330 million American people. And I did the math here. The gasoline, for a full tank, 7,000 gallons, and I'm counting that round trip, which would normally cost $31,500. I'm counting double. So it's double the fuel we need, and it's double the amount that would actually be used on the entire flight. And I'm assuming that we're paying $50 an hour for every single member of the crew that would be doing this. Although I think if you ask anyone in the American military, any of the forces, they would volunteer to save American children in a war zone. But let's assume we're going to pay them $50 an hour. That's $1,250. And I'm going to add in another $250,000. Just because. Let's just add in another $250,000 to bribe whoever has to be bribed to pay off the soldiers or the governments. It doesn't matter, to make sure that we can fly that plane in and we can fly it out without having to worry about hitting any other plane or having any other delays whatsoever, to make sure that those kids can get there, that they have the transportation from the embassy to the airport to get onto that plane and to fly off. We're going to just throw another $250,000 in there, which means it would cost $314,250. This is a stupidly small number. $314,250. And again, the United States government, as of this very second, is spending $7.07 trillion. We are spending over almost $7.1 trillion at this second. At this second. I did the math. Let's assume it's $315,000 that this would cost us for 5 hours to get 100, maybe 150 moms and children home. And we try and figure out what kind of impact would that have on the United States debt. The number is so astronomically small, it breaks the calculator. That's how many decimals small this is. It is a ridiculous non-event. This thing doesn't even trigger the interest that the United States pays. It is a non-existent number. We'd have to be in the tens of millions to actually have an impact on the spending of the United States government. This is absolutely affordable. So you can't tell me that we can't afford it. You can't tell me that this doesn't make military sense. You can't tell me it doesn't make diplomatic sense. You can't tell me it's something beyond the capabilities of the United States government. It's beyond the will of the Biden-Harris administration. They don't want to do it because they don't care. Whether it's because they don't like the American military, or they don't like children, or I don't know what the reasoning is, because it doesn't make sense. Diplomatically, it makes sense. Militarily, it makes sense. Financially, it makes sense. Please, if there is a progressive out there that can explain to me why in the world we wouldn't go and get our children, please tell me why we wouldn't do that. Tell me why Russia would target American children trying to escape a war zone, or even a potential war zone. Tell me what's the advantage for Russia, their Russian-backed agents. Hell, the Taliban. Nobody's that stupid in the world. Not Iran, not Taliban, not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda. They know what would happen. We have seen what has happened. We have gone to wars for 20 years because someone did something almost as stupid as that, and they were attacking adults. Imagine attacking children. There isn't a nation in the world that wouldn't say we were justified to take action, and everyone in the world knows that. It would be one of the most protected flights in the world ever. I'm really upset about this. We have been talking about the fact that the Biden-Harris administration have no clue what they are doing with international policy for, God, a year now, over a year. And we've been highlighting the failures in North Korea, in Iran, in Russia, with China for a year. And we've been highlighting that this entire fiasco with Russia and Ukraine has been escalating in the worst possible way because the Biden-Harris administration and Secretary of State Antony Blinken have no idea what they are doing, and they are doing it exactly the wrong way. And Joe Biden, every time they allow him to open up his mouth, makes the situation even worse. Russia is even more inclined and has even more reason to go into the Ukraine and to attack now than ever before, because they have just been released from the fear of harming American citizens and American children by accident. So they can go in with their tanks, they can go in with their troops, and they can go in with hand grenades and rockets, and they can bombard Kiev with the safety of knowing that even if they kill American citizens and children, Joe Biden won't lift a finger. Why wouldn't he go and do it? What is the United States? There is no threat. There is nothing to stop them. Joe Biden has made it clear he won't take action under any circumstance, even though it violates Executive Order 12656, even though it violates the very constitution and purpose of government, because every government is built on the same purpose, to protect its people. So from the existence of governments in the world, as well as the American Constitution, as well as Executive Order 12656, this makes no sense. I know that there are Americans who have served in our military that are livid right now. I know that there are individuals who are moms and dads who are thinking about if this was their child that are livid right now. There are people, Americans overseas, who work for our State Department that are livid right now, saying, and what happens to my kids in whatever part of the world that they are, protecting the interests of the United States, and they are now realizing that the Biden administration will hang them out to dry, will allow their kids to die without ever trying to protect them or even to seek vengeance for them in the worst case scenario. And we have God knows how many hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans still trapped in Afghanistan to this day that have been abandoned and are still angry and knowing if Joe's not going to save children in Kiev from bombs dropping on their heads in an active war zone, they really are on their own trying to get out of Afghanistan before the Taliban, before ISIS, before Al-Qaeda find these Americans and do what they always do when they do find Americans. I'm upset. We have been presenting this information to you for a year. We have been laser focused on Russia and Ukraine since December. We have been giving you updates and telling you why the Biden-Harris administration cannot be trusted and have no policy, and are telling you that they have no compassion. And our allies are watching this. And imagine if you're in the United Kingdom right now, or you're in Australia, France, Germany, New Zealand, Canada, name the nation that is alive. South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines. Name the country around the world that is allied with the United States to any degree. And then have them realize if America will not protect the children of America, as is the purpose of our government, our Constitution, and Executive Order 656, what will we do for them? If Joe Biden wouldn't protect children in an active war zone where he sent the parents, where he has placed these people in the line of fire, in danger, if he is not willing to protect our own people and our own people's children, why in the world would we protect the interests of the United Kingdom or France or Germany, Australia, New Zealand, Canada? Name the country. Who are we going to protect? We're not protecting our own people. Why would we ever, under what circumstance would we ever step in to protect anyone else? And as every nation in the world is watching this and realizing they're on their own, that the United States, that NATO, which is the United States, that the UN, which is the United States, is completely hands off and will do nothing, then they have this realization that this is putting the world in a dangerous position, that the stability of the world is going out the window, that terrorists are waking up this morning and saying, oh my God, we can attack American children. Free reign. If he wouldn't do anything to Afghanistan, if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris wouldn't do anything against the Taliban, and they're not willing to do anything against Russia, even as American children are dying, and they have every justification to do something in that scenario, and they're guaranteeing, they're promising the world they will never take any action, then every terrorist organization in the world is waking up and going, this is like a piñata. It's payday for them. They can go ape all over the world and never have to fear killing a single American because Joe Biden just doesn't care. Look, I'm just angry. And yes, I'm ranting. And I think we have every right to do so. I think you have every right to do so. And I truly believe, please reach out to your member of Congress. Reach out to your senator. And tell them, go get the American children out of Kiev. You may want to add in, get our Americans back home from Afghanistan. But I'll tell you, if you say Afghanistan and any of your representatives are Democrats, it will fall on deaf ears. I have been reaching out for months. I have been reaching out since September to Congressman Antonio Delgado of the New York 19th, now the New York 22nd, 23rd District. I've been reaching out to Antonio Delgado and asking him month after month to try and get these Americans home from Afghanistan, to even acknowledge that Americans exist in Afghanistan, having been abandoned by the Biden-Harris administration. He refuses to even acknowledge that they exist. So if you have a Democrat that happens to be in Congress and you're telling them to get the children, I don't know if it's going to be very effective or not. But maybe if you say, I won't vote for you if you don't get the children out of Kiev, maybe the pure desperation of them wanting to keep their cushy jobs in Congress will cause them to say, let's spend $315,000 to get our children back home out of danger's way. It's worth a try. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope that you've made it this far into the video. And I hope that this encourages you to take some action to let our members of Congress and therefore to let the Biden administration know this is unacceptable. If you disagree with me, I'm more than happy to hear what your argument is to say why we shouldn't protect our children, why we should violate the purpose of government, why we should violate the Constitution, why we should violate Executive Order 12656. Please, I'm happy to hear that argument. Please tell me why you think we should allow children to be in a potential and or active war zone. Please, you tell me when we have the ability to take them out in 2.5 hours. Please, I want to hear that argument. But in the meantime, I want to say I thank you for listening to this conversation. Please share this conversation. Please contact your members of Congress, whomever they may be, and beg them, plead upon them to take action to get these children out of harm's way. And I hope that you will join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to speak about this and all the issues that affect us all. Thank you.